Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have with me Anil Swaroop, who's really one of the finest bureaucrats I know. I know him since the time he uh, pioneered and thought of the RSBY, which is really the basis of Ayushman Bharat scheme now. He's been coal secretary, he's been education secretary, and I love what he always says, that the mafia in coal is underground. No, it's overground, but the mafia in education is underground, which I think really sums up the state of education and coal in India. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Swaroop. I have, of course, his book with me as well, his second book. If you've not read it, please do. It's Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant. I'm not a civil servant, but it gave me such an insight into how the bureaucracy works. So thank you very much for writing it. I also have Sunil Banwal. He's been an IAS topper, something of a boy genius, I think. And currently he's additional member, Board of Revenue, Government of Jharkhand. He was also secretary to the CM Jharkhand. So again, he's seen politics and bureaucracy, the intermix and the influence, how they influence each other very, very closely. Aditya Ranjan, young officer who's Joint Secretary of Rural Development, Jharkhand, will also be joining us shortly, if he's not joined us already. And we'll begin by with Mr. Swaroop setting the agenda and giving us a few pointers on really how the bureaucracy works in India and why we have such high expectations, and why usually they're the first people that we like to blame for anything that goes wrong as well. So over to you, Mr. Swaroop.
Thanks a lot, Kaveri, and what a pleasure it is to be once again interacting with you, as well as to young, bright, and energetic colleagues that I have here. I derive a lot of energy from young officers who do so well in the field.
Sorry, sir, before we go on, I must say, of course, that you've also set up something called Nexus of Good, which is an extraordinary initiative which highlights all the good work around the country, which talks about positive news. It's a truly extraordinary initiative of which Sunil is the Ranchi chapter head, I think, and it works on volunteerism just for the love of good work, and it's truly extraordinary. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Thank you, Kaveri, for highlighting the Nexus of Good. In fact, it is occupying a lot of my time, and I'm thoroughly enjoying engaging myself in Nexus of Good. I'll come to that later on. But first, about civil service, bureaucracy, and all the accolades and the bouquets and the brickbats that the bureaucracy gets. To an outsider, actually, things look very simple. They say, why don't things happen in the government?
Right.
And civil servant, being the visible face of the government, tends to get most of the brickbats if things don't happen. But what is not understood is that in a democracy like ours, there is no dearth of ideas. Almost everyone has a solution to a problem. Even before the problem arises, people are talking of solutions. Take, for example, COVID. You talk to anybody, he'll tell you how to handle COVID. Now, the problem is that in a situation like ours, any idea to fructify and sustain has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, and judicially tenable. A handful. And if you go into each of these aspects, you realize that if one of them is missing, it won't sustain. It may happen for a short while, but over a period of time, it will not. To begin with, if an idea is not politically acceptable, how do you think it will work? Because ultimate decision maker in the country is a politician. I'm not saying, having said these 6 things, that things shouldn't happen, they can't happen. In fact, my book, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, actually says that despite these things, despite these 6 set of limitations, and despite the 5 C's, that is the CBI, CVC, CAG, CIC, and courts, despite all this, a lot of things are happening. And that's what the book celebrates, that you can make things happen on the ground. And I've given examples of at least 50 civil servants, and there are many, many more who have made things happen. Now, the key in the book is that whereas you begin with a dilemma, that is, मुख्तसर सी जिंदगी के अजब से अफसाने हैं, या तीर भी चलाने हैं, परिंदे भी बचाने. This is the quintessential dilemma that a civil servant faces. However, despite this dilemma, things can be done on the ground. And episode after episode is an explanation of how things can be made to happen. this book is a celebration of making things happen. Because if you go through the book, you'll realize, as anyone civil servant would, that there could be dilemmas to begin with as you start the service. But as you become clearer in your mind, as you start understanding the dynamics, you start making things happen, irrespective of the set of circumstances. And the dilemmas, though they exist, but in your mind they cease to exist because you become very clear about the choices that you're about to make. But it all depends on you. It all depends on the civil servant. It depends on that civil servant and he has a choice to look to such officers who managed to succeed or such officers who failed. So some of us, they get stuck on honesty. Now, as I roll it out in my book, that honesty is a given. You cannot exist without being honest as a civil servant.
Right.
But honesty, full stop, doesn't work. You have to be effective on the ground. And how do you do that? That comes in the last couplet of my book. खुद ही को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. Meaning thereby that you have absolutely no control over a set of circumstances, but you have phenomenal control over yourself. If you can evolve an officer to be reckoned with, you will be reckoned with. You don't have to go to any politician to ask for anything. You don't have to make compromises. You will be reckoned with, and you will be called if there is a coal crisis or any other crisis. They will want you to do that. So the choice is yours. That's what the book is all about. That's what bureaucracy is all about. You have choices. The question is whether you exercise those right choices or not.
Right. And it's quite fascinating. I'll just take a few more minutes with you, Mr. Swaroop, because it's quite fascinating when you talk about, for instance, the presentation on the health insurance scheme to the Prime Minister. When you were asked to give it, you in fact make that point that, my scheme was, the scheme that I had thought of at the regional level was dismissed because perhaps it was seen as politically unviable because it belonged in a sense to the previous government. And you say that, are you sure you want me there? And in fact, the person on the, the secretary's, the committee who voted against it is also present there. And I found that a fascinating chapter. He doesn't utter a word, and the Prime Minister listens to you, asks for details, and actually you manage to convince him. Talk a little about things like this. They're so interesting.
So long as you don't expect anything from the politician.
Yeah.
So long as you don't have a personal agenda, and so long as you have basic competencies to communicate, I think you can sell it to the politician. You can actually convince him with an idea which he thinks totally against. He's totally against. You can. And there have been a number of occasions in my career where I managed to convince the politician to believing what I believed was right. There were many other occasions where I couldn't convince him, but that's how life is. As Reinhold Niebuhr says, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. So once you are convinced that this is how it is, if you are able to convince the political decision maker, which I more often than not probably got to do, because I did not have any agenda. And I keep telling everyone, it's a question of what do you expect of the politician? I never went to a politician for any job, any assignment, any time. Took it as they came. The advantage was very simple. There's no better service than the Indian Administrative Service. I write in my first book that I became a civil servant because my father wanted me to become an IAS officer. But at the end of 38 years, I would like to become an IAS officer in my next incarnation if I am born again. I would like to be that for a simple reason that there's no service in the world where you can do so much good to so many helpless people in the world. And jokingly, I tell them that it is only in the IAS that if you are efficient and honest, you can survive. If you are dishonest and inefficient, you can thrive. And if you are good enough, you become Secretary Government of India. If you're not so good enough, you can become Cabinet Secretary Government of India, even RBI Governor. Which service offers you that? Amazing service.
Great. May I bring in Sunil Banwal, who's excelled all throughout his career, whether at the inception or later as well. And Mr. Swaroop has always noticed your work, Sunil, whether it was Swachh Bharat, and he's highlighted it as well, or all the innovations you made as a secretary to the CM Jharkhand. Sunil, talk a little about your, how you negotiated the relationship with the Chief Minister, because Mr. Swaroop details that very well in his relationship with Kalyan Singh, I think. It's quite an extraordinary relationship. He's able to point out to him when his son misuses official perks. He was with him when the Babri Masjid fell. I mean, a lot of interesting anecdotes about his relationship with Mr. Kalyan Singh there. And I wonder if you found any tips in your handling of the Chief Minister.
So let me first thank you for organizing this, and let me also thank Anil Swarup sir, with whom also I had opportunity to work with, and a lot of things to learn from him, because whatever he said and he has written in his book is something which is almost every IAS officer passes through those stages.
Right.
And I think all such kind of incidences, one or the other, keeps coming in the career of the IAS officer. And it is much more pronounced if you are working with a political leadership, because then you really understand the nuances of the administration, which is not just the rule book, or which is not just as you have read in the rule book. Rather, it is more with your own conviction, your own attitude to work, and also the whole process of convincing the political leadership. That requires some kind of acumen, which of course most of the IAS officers who come through this rigorous process will learn in the process. But having the opportunity to work with a political leadership gives a lot of insight of handling a very critical and crucial issues. Let me first tell you, in last 5 years when I worked with the Chief Minister, I realized by and large political leadership who hold such position like Chief Minister or so, they themselves are very much curious, and they themselves are so keen to do so many things, because they know they have got 5 years to work, and they have made huge promise to the people. So they want these things to come on the ground. There could be some of the issues which are quite populist, but there are many which are quite in a way of systemic improvement. Because everybody, every political leader, let's say, wants to create employment. Now it is our bureaucracy to guide him that how to create employment. Is it giving subsidy is the way, or you provide infrastructure facilities so that more and more entrepreneurship or industries comes which create the employment.
Right.
Similarly, if you they would like that people get benefited by some kind of concrete monetary benefits, but then you suggest them at what stage of life one should be given this monetary benefits. Suppose I was there involved in designing one of the scheme while I was Chief Secretary to Chief Minister. It's called Sukanya scheme. This is something which came with after deliberation with few agencies, including UNICEF. But when we went to the Chief Minister saying that we must give some cash to the mother when a child gets born, and then when he gets into he or she gets into the first time in the school, and then at class 5, 8, and so on. See, subsequently, I went to Geneva to attend a conference which was being organized in the ILO headquarters. And I realized almost same thing is being talked all over the world, that we must give some kind of monetary incentive to the mother when the child is born. Reason is mother loses a wage once she is on family way. Child needs a nutrition, and the family needs some kind of a financial security. So this kind of thing immediately attracts a political leadership, because more than the bureaucracy, it is the politician who likes this kind of a scheme, whereas they initially had thought that some kind of a monetary benefit should be given to the people. Now it's our role how to guide it in a way that it makes huge sense both for the political leadership as well as for the intellectuals who think of health and nutrition of mother and child and so on. So what I found working with a politician, sometimes it becomes very complex. Sometimes you find situation is completely contradictory, and then our role as a bureaucrat is to give the right advice. Finally, as Anil Swarup sir also had mentioned somewhere in the book, after all, we work for the political leadership. He is a minister or the chief minister. Our role is to give the right suggestion, right advisory, and put it on record that these are the situation. And once a decision is taken by the leadership, whether it is a cabinet or a minister or the chief minister, then our role is to actually implement it. Then we should not be questioning that our logic was not accepted, and therefore I'll have hesitation in implementing that. So that kind of attitude, I don't think will be a right attitude in case of a democracy where you have elected government, political leadership who has come on the promise of doing something for the people of a state or the country. So this kind of situation, I think we need to handle. But there is another side of it, getting an opportunity to work at that level. The kind of opportunity to make changes and actually change the lives of people is so high that keeps you driving so much. You work much more than any other post. In fact, I was feeling that if I'm wasting an hour, actually probably I'm not connecting to few more people which I could have connected. So such kind of things are existing. And as was said also, an IAS officer gets such an good opportunity, and the kind of work, ambit of work is there. There is a lot of enthusiasm and motivation that keeps driving really very, very much to me. And I had a good experience. Fortunately, it depends on the individual chief minister too, but I had a very good experience of working of the chief minister at that time. Yeah.
Great. Mr. Swarup, may I ask you to step in and make a, perhaps if you have any comment on what Mr. Banwal said, and then I'll ask Aditya Ranjan to step in as well.
I have seen Sunil work very closely.
Right.
First, when he was handling the tricky health insurance scheme, then I saw him work as the secretary to the chief minister. I also had a brief stint in the state.
Right.
The state had very difficult initial years because unlike Chhattisgarh, which was created almost at the same time, Chhattisgarh had stable political governments,
Right.
whereas Jharkhand went through very serious crisis. In those times, and then to recover so well, I saw it function. The chief minister and the secretary both, I really admired both of them. And I went there because I admired them. I admired the way they were working. So I have seen it from very close quarters, and what he says is absolutely correct. I think I've also wondered why should a politician not want to do good work? Or for that matter, any individual not want to do good work. It's a question of what you're looking at. So I think it was phenomenal work done then, and I'm sure Sunil will be at it very soon as well. He can't be left out. He can't be left in the cold.
Yeah, but often, it happens when there is a regime change. People who are associated with the previous government, sort of somehow get left behind. What does an IAS officer do in such a situation? Just keep his head down and continue.
Hone your skills. See,
Yeah.
there is no job in the IAS
Right.
which is bad.
Right.
So I don't think any job, in every job you can do so much. The job which Sunil is occupying, I have written a chapter in my book on that.
Yeah.
I was also member board of revenue. And such an amazing time I've talked about bats and rats in that organization.
Yeah.
And how I got rid of those bats and rats. And I remember each bit. So you can do well anywhere. I don't think we should desire or want to be in a position or call one position good and the other bad. It's not so. Every position, I keep telling my younger colleagues, you become head of the department in 10 years time, where the guy who spends his entire lifetime doesn't become. So what could be better than that? It's by God's grace. This service is amazing.
Right. Aditya, may I bring you in? You're possibly the youngest of the lot here. And ask about your experience, especially the work you did during COVID was quite extraordinary. I was seeing the phone booth pay sample. I was looking at some of the work you did, of dispensing food through robots.
He's,
Very innovative.
he's there. He's there. His stories are there on Nexus of Good. He set
Exactly.
examples for so many others. As a youngster, I couldn't do what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he's absolutely amazing. I'm glad you got him there.
Yeah, I'm so happy. Aditya, would you like to step in? I think you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, sirs. Good morning, sirs. As my seniors have already talked about, no, but there are a couple of things which I have been facing for a very small period of time, especially for the short career that I had in the past. Keeping the same motivation amid all these C's and all these negativity around, including the political class or media, is really really tough. And as Anil Swarup sir has quoted, that getting things done, and if you are honest, then you can get things done easily, right from convincing the political class or doing things. But sometimes it is way easier to stay honest and get things done than appearing to be honest while getting things done, because there are so many things going around. There is a huge difference between being honest and appearing to be honest. Apart from that, as sir has already quoted, no job in this service or otherwise, or no, I believe it, in a extended manner, that no job in this world can be, called low exciting or less exciting or something like that, because I always believe in input output ratio. So be it, if you are a collector of a district, if one is a collector of a district, maybe with less amount of input, they can impact more lives. But in some other posts, some other avenues, maybe your input will be more and the output will be less. But there will always be huge opportunities, especially as in the COVID times when there were no cases in West Simbhum. People used to call me, how many cases are there? You have been doing so much. Then I used to tell there are no cases in Simbhum for last 3 months. So they were there to kar kyun rahe? Why are you doing all these things? So see, if I was a collector of a place where there were so many cases, or DDC of a place where there were so many cases, it might have got more highlighted. But when there was no case, I got time to do these things. So there are positives or negatives of all the places, all the posts. So I believe wherever I am or where one is, they can do their best, especially in this service. And I really agree with both the sirs in all the points related to honesty and handling the political class. Although I have not worked very closely with the political class, but still they are true, and there are good and bad everywhere, including bureaucracy or politicians. So there we find both the types of people everywhere, and it is the idea is to distinguish between them and then keeping the good side on your side if you are good, bad side on your side if you are bad.
I like that. Very pragmatic. The bad side on your side if you're bad. But Aditya, I also want to ask you, since you've recently come from a district to the state capital, I presume, your Joint Secretary Rural Development, how different is the experience away from your district?
Being in the secretariat, the work is more of a file work, but still we have the opportunity to go to the field. And especially there are a couple of schemes which are going on, especially this Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Swawalamban Yojana is going on in this department. I am trying to own it up. So this talks about creating villages which are self-sustained,
Right.
and really ideal in nature. I have been visiting these villages, and trust me, within 6 months, Jharkhand will come up with such finest villages which will make news in the nation.
Right. Wonderful, wonderful work. Mr. Swarup, can I bring you in here again and talk about this, something that you mentioned in the book as well, the different rates at which Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand developed. And I found that very interesting. It's not just the political instability, you also say the bureaucracy had a role to play. Would you like to elaborate on that? Because that really tells you how a state can progress or not progress.
I tried to compare the two states that became, so to say, states at the same time. In fact, by single order, they became separate states. And when I see, apart from the political instability, I think bureaucracy also had a very important role to play. And as I write in that chapter, I think a person like Vivek Dhand, who was with the chief minister, and chief minister was there for 15 years. First, he was secretary to chief minister, then he became chief secretary. So he knew the entire background and he worked at it. Look at what happened in Jharkhand. Jharkhand, like this series of chief ministers, they had series of chief secretaries. So that stability in bureaucracy that actually helps did not help Jharkhand. The bureaucracy itself was pretty unstable. And some of the best of bureaucrats from Jharkhand came over to Delhi. That didn't happen in case of Raipur. Vivek Dhand chose to stay back and work in the state. That's a personal choice that each civil servant has to make. But I think it makes a difference because unlike elsewhere in the world where systems operate, in India, individuals make a lot of difference. And that's why you say that when a particular person becomes district magistrate, that district improves, or head of an organization, that organization improves. Because individual matters so much. It's not that institutions don't, but in India, more so. Because as I jokingly say, Ayodhya, Ram ki khadaon se to chali nahi. You have to have a Ramchandji for Ayodhya. So you have to have Ramchandji at every place. And that's why, in fact, there's an article today in the Guardian where I've written, individuals matter so much, and hence human resource management acquires a very important factor, becomes a very important factor in terms of development of an organization or a state or anywhere. So selection of the right officer for the right job is critical. And I say that in another chapter of the book also, that if we don't put the right man for the right job, it is a recipe for disaster. And stability is even more important because what happens is normally you transfer a guy who's not doing well. I'm against that because then he'll destroy the other organization. Destruction is much easier. He can do that in 3 and 6 months. You leave him in that organization, let him destroy it totally. At least you'll be able to nail him, fix responsibility. If you keep shifting him every 3 months and 6 months, you can't nail him and he'll keep destroying other organizations. At least then you will leave. You know, these are the prescriptions. I've not given many prescriptions. There are only one chapter where I talk about some prescription, and this is one. That you must give stability to an officer. That is what that happened in Chhattisgarh. I think chief secretaries had very long tenures. There was stability in bureaucracy. Something because of political instability in Jharkhand, stability in bureaucracy couldn't come through. These startling figures, you know. Jharkhand is thrice as much populated as Chhattisgarh. And almost similar in, you know, the tribal population and all. Yet its excise revenue is 1/3 of Chhattisgarh. It's incredible. I mean, it's difficult to understand how does this happen because the social and cultural habits are virtually the same. So why is excise revenue 1/3 of Chhattisgarh when the population is 3 times? These are areas which probably need to be looked into, probably will be looked into, because Jharkhand, unlike Chhattisgarh, is a revenue-starved state. And there these efforts were required where stability in bureaucracy was important.
Right. I'd like to bring in the two gentlemen here who are from the state of Jharkhand. What is your analysis, Sunil and then Aditya?
I think I also agree to what sir is saying. We were in initial phases of our surveys. When I joined, the Jharkhand was created just after 3 years. And we were very hopeful because we all opted to come to Jharkhand from Bihar. We were thinking Jharkhand is going to be one of the most prosperous state in the country, given the natural resource it has, the human resource it has, the kind of peaceful, peace-loving people we have, the cities like Jamshedpur, Dhanbad, Bokaro, Ranchi we have. But very soon we realized these all ingredients requires a very crucial element, which is leadership. And that we saw it has been changing every years. In fact, in 14 years, we had 13 governments, including president rules. So, and during that, what I realized, though the field level officers continued to hold for a little longer duration, the state level changes were very frequent. You know, every time you get a new government, the first thing the new government used to do is to transfer at least at the headquarter level. So at the policy consistency was almost, very much limited, constrained by this fact. And in fact, the political instability did get reflected in bureaucratic instability. And as sir was saying very emphatically, and I do agree very much to that statement, that with the change of bureaucracy, actually bureaucrats like it. Because then you can't be held responsible if you are transferred within 6 months or 3 months. And at the same time, whether you are in one department or the another department, your comfort or your conveniences doesn't change. You continue to get all the perks of the government in almost all the positions you hold. But at the same time, government has the disadvantage of not holding you responsible for not making concrete progress. So this kind of situation was there, and probably since it was happening continuously for almost 14 years, bureaucracy also got used to such kind of working, and they could not think beyond 1 year or 2 years period. So though it is a permanent bureaucracy, irrespective of the change of the political leadership, the bureaucracy continues to function, but their vision was limited to only 1 or 2 years, because they were all anticipating that the government will not last for 5 years. So this kind of uncertainty in the mind of the bureaucrat itself was big, restricting factor. And it's true that almost all succession board, not just the chief secretary, if you see the succession board of all secretaries, you'll find in last 20 years, at least there are 20 officers posted in that post.
So that's quite fascinating, Sunil, in a way. Mr. Swaroop and Sunil, what you're saying is transfers are actually not a punishment. They're actually a reward for bad work.
In fact, yes, sir.
Sorry, please go on.
So in fact, one of the senior officers told me the reward of a good work is more work. And the punishment of bad work is further less work. In fact, you are the government thinks that you are not required. They post you in a place where there are less work, and ultimately officer doesn't lose. In fact, government doesn't use the officer. So the right approach would be to fix the responsibility. You give the assignment, keep him for certain sufficient period so that results could be seen. And if results are not seen, then you fix the responsibility, just not transfer them. Right. That's the way to look at it. And I think I have experienced sometimes that you start working and you are at almost on the peak of actually delivering, suddenly you get transferred. So those kind of situation, which is not without any application of mind, sometimes is much more damaging than transfers which takes place.
And very demotivating.
Yeah, initially it is, but I think officers get used to it in the long term. So in fact, I feel in last 23 years, probably I have held around 40 posts.
40?
So 40 posts, and some of the posts I held in additional charge, but I was writing my details. So I saw I held 40 posts. So on an average, if I divide at a time, I held 3 posts also, then it is less than a year. But that doesn't deter you from starting your work from the first day. You hold the post, you get excitement that you want to learn what this post has opportunity for me. So there is a learning experience, and once you learn the opportunities in that post to deliver, you start working on it and you start delivering. By the time you get really bored of, you are out. So officer doesn't lose much. He gets another excitement in a new post. And sir has written very well in the book itself, it is a rebirth. So it is every time you are in one post, you born again in another post and you start working. So it's again excitement of like a new life. You have excitement of a new post. So that way, I think transfers is less damaging to officers, more to the overall delivery in the government.
Absolutely fascinating. Mr. Swaroop, would you like to come in? Then I'd like to put a question to Aditya.
No, I tend to agree with what Sunil is saying. But only thing is, one is discussing it at an academic level and seeing what is wrong with the system. That can go on endlessly, and we can keep writing. The other is looking inwards, and which he himself says, looking inward and seeing what can you do in the given set of circumstances, and deriving satisfaction out of whatever little that you can do. because though you may be worried about the larger issues and the problems that face the state, you can't do a nut about it. What you can do is what you can do. So hence be totally focused on what you can do. And I love the approach of Aditya actually. He couldn't care less whether, I mean, he's so young to have come to such conclusions. I came to it much later. He looks very easy about it, casual about it. That okay, I was there, I was doing my job there, I'm here, I'm doing my job here. That has to be the life actually.
Right.
That is how service has to be approached. And I'm so glad at his young age, he has such wise head on his shoulders, because he's realized that you can't do much to your transfers. If you get transferred, so be it.
Yeah.
It's beyond your control. Start enjoying the moments that you are in and start doing whatever you are. That's how, I mean, I'm sure I wish him well. I'm sure he's going to do well in this career.
Yeah, he looks very Zen-like. I think he must be either doing Vipassana or, some meditation, some form of meditation every day. Aditya, but tell me, at the district level, the collector really, from whatever little I know, is the king or the queen in a way, because you're the boss and you have so many schemes to implement. When you come to the secretariat, you're perhaps not that same king or queen. You're more like a cog in a gigantic wheel. So, what are the things that you learned at the district level, which you will take with you to, which you bring with you to the secretariat?
So, ma'am, I'll say that, in the district, when you are proverbial king, so-called, proverbial king, although you are a servant basically, but still you have people to, follow your commands. So you tell कि उस गांव में चले जाओ, ये काम करके आ जाओ.
Right.
But when I'm in the secretariat, I have the file work to do. Apart from that, if I have to do something in a school, in a hospital, in a village, I'll go do it myself. Then I'll say it is a time of self-realization कि I used to command others कि ये करके आ जाओ. Now I realize what problems are there in the village.
Right.
So it is a really wonderful experience being in the secretariat. Regarding the districts, the scale of problems, the scale, in terms of size, or the number of problems, in terms of health, education sectors. So there are so many sectors and such a big scale. There are more than 2,000 Anganwadi centers, more than 1,000 schools. So it's very tough to monitor all of them together or deliver things in a couple of years or a year. So it is very tough to have some objective criteria to judge कि ये हो गया and ये नहीं हुआ. So it is very tough to do those things at the district level. When you are in the secretariat, especially when I have not seen much of the secretariat, it has been just 2 months now. So when I'm here, so I'm planning to pick one idea, one thing, and then deliver in that. Rather than thinking about so many things, so many people, so many institutions, and then there is no deliverable as such which I can deliver in a couple of months. Here I can think of one thing and then deliver. So I would say this is much more satisfying, and I believe the next post will be more just like Sir has said, and he has mentioned in his book also. The next post should be more satisfying, more enlightening, and it's kind of rebirth. Every time I go to a new place, I should feel कि अब इसमें उससे तो better ही करना है.
Right. Aditya, there's a question that has come specifically to you from Rajiv Gupta. How will the village be transformed into being smart and sustainable? Can you share your views on that?
Okay, so I started it in West Simbhum first. So there were 18 villages that we selected. We did a training of all the 18 Panchayat Mukhyas and ward members using one person who is Himanshu Patel from Gujarat, Punsari village Panchayat Mukhya. And then after the training, we did regular Aam Sabhas on a daily basis. Similar thing is happening in state level also. So there are many villages selected in Khunti districts. So these villages have a couple of lok preraks. So they go to the village, they stay there for 6 months or more depending on the need of the village. And then they orient on a daily basis. So they ensure the only way out of all of these, I would say, experiences from the district or from here under Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Swalambhan Yojana. All of these experiences, I would say the only, I would say the Ramban or the bullet of success to making villages self-sustainable is the Aam Sabha. If you empower them well, if you let them do things, do not give them anything. Do not tell them ki ye milega, wo milega. No, there are 2 villages I used to say in my discussions in the Aam Sabha. There is a Bhikhari village where you go and they ask for pension, ration de do, school mein teacher de do, nurse de do. And the other kind of village is the model village where they don't ask for anything. They just ask for ideas and they do it. And slowly things start happening. It has been, visible in a couple of villages in Ranchi also, in Simbhum also. And I believe if Aam Sabhas get empowered the way we expect, if they can ensure that schools function, if they can take their things in their own hands, that yes, Anganwadi should function, the nurse should come, nobody can stop. As a collector or as a DDC, I cannot see 2330 Anganwadis to open on a daily basis. But these samitis or the sabhas at the village level, they can.
Right. Aditya, I've always been curious, how exactly, how many schemes does a district collector have to administer? It's been rationalized now, I know, but how many schemes exactly do you have at the district level?
So if you talk about development, there are 12 to 14 departments in general, the major departments, but
Right.
the schemes keep coming and keep going depending on the change of setup or change of ideas or change of
Right.
needs. So there are a number of schemes, but the priority schemes that run at a district level, when the governments change or the priorities
Right.
of the people change, then the priority schemes that they run are 5 to 6 mostly.
Right.
But most of the schemes which are, if some scheme like RSBY was there, it got converted into Ayushman Bharat. So they keep happening. So more or less these sectors, if we get hold of, कि नहीं मुझे health पे करना है. We attended a session of Niti Aayog in Delhi where the CEO of Niti Aayog said, कि why can't one person can take charge of one thing, rather than at a district, doing everything. So do everything, but take charge of one thing. So I thought, let's being the DDC, I'll take charge of health and education. I'll leave the rest at its own pace. I will not leave the rest as it is, but I'll at its own pace. But I'll, pick these two things as my, strongest things. कि इन दोनों में तो अच्छा करना है, बाकी सब ठीक है, चलता रहे.
Right. Mr. Swaroop, a quick question from our audience, and then I'll come to a question I want to ask you as well. Nagaratna HR Nag says there's a big gap in planning and implementation as one plan. Someone tries to or not. This is because of frequent. Is it because of frequent transfer? Basically wants to know why there's a big gap in the planning and implementation.
I have written one full chapter in the ethical dilemmas of a civil servant, explaining why don't things happen on the ground. And the title of that chapter is the disconnect that is between planning and execution.
Right.
Because when decisions do happen in Delhi, sometimes we believe that all wisdom resides in Delhi.
Yes.
And we somehow take a decision without taking stakeholders into confidence. And I have explained a successful story of Swachh Bharat.
Exactly. I was about to come to that.
It happened. Yeah. I compared two schemes, Swachh Bharat and Smart Cities.
Absolutely.
One happened, but didn't happen. And they provide an explanation of how to make things happen.
Right.
Because there was that connect with the ground reality in Swachh Bharat. Because secretary traveled like mad. He was in the field most of the time.
Yeah.
And little experience that I have had either in coal sector, which happened because I didn't convene a single meeting in Delhi in the 2 years as Secretary Government of India. People don't believe it. Every meeting in the field. Now the question is whether we understand the ground reality. Even as Secretary Education, in the first 3 months, I traveled to 24 states, going to Bastar, Sukma. The idea was to get the hang of the ground reality. It is when you don't get a hang of the ground reality, when you don't take stakeholders into confidence, you run into these problems. Because bureaucracy has nothing to do with politics. So for example, now we are talking of commercial mining. Now, as luck would have it, all these mines exist in governments that they do not belong to NDA. So they have run into problems.
Yeah.
Same was the case when we auctioned coal mines. And that is why I went over and met the chief minister. I said, you keep politics apart. We got to deliver this. So if that had to be done, it had to be done. And you have to find your way. So the difference is the ability to connect with the ground. And that's the difference between implementation and non-implementation. It's not that all government schemes don't happen. A number of schemes happen, but unfortunately, we don't analyze as to why did they happen. So if we look at a project monitoring group, we cleared 5 lakh crores worth of project during UPA 2. One must understand why did it happen. If Swachh Bharat happened, why did it happen? If coal happened, why did it happen? So instead of understanding the successes and building on those successes, what we do is we keep coming up with ideas and say, as if ideas are going to work by themselves. They don't. You have to take them to the ground. And idea itself has to be rooted to the ground because that's the ultimate beneficiary lies there on the ground. As I jokingly say, center is a fiction. Actually. It does not exist geographically. It's a fiction. The real action is in the state. So if you don't take states into confidence, schemes will not work. That's the reason why they don't happen on the ground. Second is implementation does not give you headlines.
Yeah.
Ideas give you headlines.
Right.
So look at this new education policy. It's been going on for 6 years. And now everyone is discussing it.
Yeah.
When it actually happens on the ground, no one will look at it because they will be looking at some new ideas. So if you want only headlines, then only ideas will be there. But if you want work, probably headlines will not be there because that's not visible. And one of the reasons why I started Nexus of Good is to give traction to happening on the ground.
Right.
So in Nexus of Good, we don't discuss ideas at all.
Yeah.
It's only happening. So if Aditya Ranjan, her story features in Nexus of Good, it features because he's done something on the ground and ideated from there rather than giving from idea here and trying to implement it in the field.
Right. Rajesh Gupta has a sort of additional question to this. There's no vision from the government to update the state cadre and the secretariat. Is that so? And a sort of question that's connected from Vineet Kashyap. If possible, do share the alignment of the IAS with the state bureaucracy in states like Jharkhand. How can better coordination between the two stakeholders lead to better governance?
You want me to answer the question?
Yeah, and then I'd like Sunil to
So
answer.
see, state bureaucracy, which is non-IAS, the state cadre officers have a very important role to play. In fact, they are at the cutting edge. So the state governments, those that have succeeded are those that have taken these people on board. Because ultimately the action gets taken by BDOs, the Tehsildars, the Thanedars. They are the people who are visible. It's not the IAS officer who's visible.
Yeah.
The visibility to the common man is the people on the ground there. So hence their morale, involving them in the decision-making process and encouraging them is extremely, extremely important.
Right. Sunil, there's an additional question from Vineet Kashyap that says, what is the approach of the Jharkhand government to implement the constitutional provisions of PISA Act and guidelines of the 73rd Amendment to achieve the strengthening of the Gram Sabhas?
I think it's already there. This PESA Act has the whole national application, and in the state it has been applied. During the Panchayat elections, this has been implemented in the scheduled tribe areas, and in most of the places in the scheduled tribe areas, this Gram Sabha is headed by the traditional village headman, not by the Mukhya. Right. Whereas in the other scheduled areas, it is the Mukhya who heads the Gram Sabha. So that kind of implementation has been done. Of course, as Aditya has said, the whole success lies in empowering the Gram Sabha. Just holding the Gram Sabha and making a proceeding which somebody, some kind of middleman who makes the proceeding, and then all the schemes are passed, etc. Those are not the right way by which we can actually make Gram Sabha fully functional, nor the PESA, the whole object of the PESA can be fully realized unless we empower the Gram Sabha. And it is very important in case of tribal areas, because we know tribal areas have unique strength of having a traditional village headman, and they command huge respect in the village. And we need to leverage that social capital which they have. So this kind of thing is being done in Jharkhand. Of course, the point which is very important is how to make our cutting edge bureaucracy much more effective in empowering the village institutions, village or panchayat institutions. Somehow that is not fully realized, and a lot of efforts are being made in first, recruiting right kind of people, and then giving right kind of training, and then making them post in those areas where they are, where their need is much higher. One of the reasons why IAS officers or the central service officers are much more effective is the kind of training they are imparted in 2 years, and they are made ready for taking up the responsibilities. The same kind of efforts need to be made at the state level to make state bureaucracy much more ready for their responsibilities. And some of the states have done. Jharkhand is trying to do that. They have done the first stage of recruiting the officers, because there was no long gap, and a lot of vacancies were there. So now of course, post COVID, a lot of efforts will be on the training and then making them ready to go to the field at the cutting edge. Of course, it's not one day affairs. It takes time. HR management and the whole administrative reform which is needed in the state, it's all in the discussion and deliberation stage. And some of the reforms has been implemented, like APAR system, this annual performance appraisal system,
Right.
which central government did for all India services and the central services. A state, Jharkhand is probably one of the few states which has implemented for all the state civil service officers. So now at least there is an objective way of evaluating officers, and at least on a yearly basis it is evaluated. Else, in a manual process, a lot of people did not fill up the appraisal.
Yeah, Aditya, may I bring you in here quickly and talk a little bit about this aspect of Gram Sabhas and the PESA Act? You need to unmute yourself, Aditya.
As Sir has rightly pointed out, and I was posted in one of these scheduled districts, so I could see the difference, between the Mukhya and the Munda is the headman of the village headman. So if there is an Aam Sabha and something is being passed, people may not listen to Mukhya, but the Munda is the person whom they listen to. So regarding PISA Act, I would say there is something called PISA rules that has to be implemented in the state, that has to be designed and then passed. And Jharkhand has not yet done it, only draft has been formed. So I would say at both the sides, Gram Sabha is thinking कि PISA Act में मुझे ये मिलना था, I was supposed to get these things and I'm not getting it. And we at the secretariat or at the political masters, they think that these things will empower them too much, and many of the projects which needs to be done in these areas, which are good for them also, we will not be able to implement them. So the right chord to hit here is to first either enlighten or train these village headmen in a way that they realize that PISA Act is not only about giving them power, but they also about making them realize their duties and how there can be convergence of the state government, bureaucracy, and these village headmen to do good about the village.
Right. Mr. Swarup, may I bring you in here? There's a question that's addressed to you about coming in of private foreign universities. I think you can't escape your role as chief analyst of the National Education Policy. Someone wants to know how will Indian universities cope with the coming in of foreign universities, and especially research? You need to unmute yourself.
Let me explain how it works now.
Yeah.
Those that want to attend foreign universities, pay in foreign currency, go abroad and get their education there. So I think this is a great move by the government to enable such university to set shop in India. So this will prevent a lot of foreign exchange from going out. Secondly, it will provide a different benchmark to the universities here in India to compare themselves with, and they will be able to improve with them. So instead of feeling psychologically down and out, in fact, they should look up and see how they can learn from those that come here. So I think it's always welcome. They should welcome such university being set up here, or their outpost being set up here, where instead of children going abroad and learning there, they will learn here itself, and also provide a lot of lessons for other universities here, not to compete with them. This whole objective, we have got, lost in this competition. Instead of competing with others, how about learning from others?
Right.
I've always said, even to young children, I say, compete with yourself. Don't compete with others. Improve what you are and learn from others. So if a good practice comes to India, I think it will help us learn and improve our own condition, as did competition in the 90s. Imagine the telecom sector that we have before 90s and what we have today. It wouldn't have happened but for competition. I mean, people had a similar argument: if they come, what will happen to us? I think we will improve. We will learn from them, and that's the way forward.
Right. Sunil, there are a couple of questions for you. From Adarsh, I've seen your videos on YouTube when you were Principal Secretary to former CM, in which you used to scold the non-performing officers sitting alongside the former CM. How does it later hamper your professional relations with them? Quite a cheeky question.
No, this the whole thing is it's related to the public grievance redressal system.
Right.
During that previous government regime, a new project called CM Jan Sambad, Mukhya
Right.
Mantri Jan Sambad was started. And this was a very unique experiment of lodging all kinds of public grievances through various channels to a single portal. So we had set up a big call center which could receive public grievances through telephone call, through email, through social media, etc. The best part of it was the monitoring of the public grievances. Normally, this monitoring is done at the bureaucratic level, and people will just get away with some kind of interim report. But in this case, Chief Minister himself was monitoring once in a month, in which all the collectors and SP would be on video conferencing, and all the secretaries will be in the hall, hearing the public grievances, and the people will present his grievance. And the objective was this grievance will not get closed till it is resolved to the satisfaction of the complainant.
Okay.
And if it requires any policy change, that also need to be flagged at the state level. So a lot of grievances like hand pump, within few months it got completely off, because government took a final call at the policy level that all hand pumps should be repaired, and wherever needed there should be enough provision for that. This repair of the transformers, which used to take 1 month for a small fault, the whole thing got changed in 6 months. Reason being, the Chief Minister decided that I don't want to hear if any transformer is kept faulty for more than 24 hours.
Right.
So these arrangements were made. The objective was, once the Chief Minister was monitoring that, where the collector and the secretaries will respond to the grievance on a weekly basis, as Secretary to Chief Minister, I was supposed to monitor. So on this, I used to take randomly some 20 grievances, and will call the all nodal officers of each department and each district, who will be through the video conferencing. And the whole objective was to resolve the grievances. So it was not a scolding, it was more of a sensitizing them that this grievance which is today could happen with us also, because
But
tomorrow
as he's asked, did it affect your relationship with the?
I don't think so, because it is understanding the complete perspective. If I was to do for myself, if I was doing for something which was going to help me,
Right.
probably that could have been the reason. But it was a grievance for, say, let's old age pension, for maybe PDS ration, or maybe the person who got killed in a Naxal violence and his family is to get
Right.
the benefits. So these kind of things was what our officers were required to address. And if it was not being addressed, people were holed up. And I believe it is necessary, if in government we need to deliver, I think we need to follow up to really pursue the grievances so that it gets resolved. And in the process, if it requires policy changes, policy interventions, that need to be done. And somehow it was done, because it had the ownership at the highest level, and government was willing to respond to the grievances. And I'm sure a lot of people, around 4 lakh people got benefited. 4 lakh families got benefited.
Kaveri, I can vouch. Kaveri, I can vouch for what Sunil is saying, because I saw it for myself.
Okay, great.
Jharkhand has one of the most sophisticated grievance redressal systems,
Okay.
and it's totally technology driven. There are so many people who are, there are call centers, and each grievance is followed electronically till it resolved. It's an amazing system for many others to learn. In fact, I don't know why we haven't got it on Nexus of Good. This is something which is absolutely phenomenal in Jharkhand.
In fact, Mr. Swaroop, sometimes I think India is really run by the states. The whole idea of the center, as you say, it's a fiction. But also, young officers wanting to come to the center. There's the attraction, the glamour of perhaps serving at the center. What's your advice to them?
my advice is based on my personal experience. I was most reluctant to
You
come
were
to the
most
center.
reluctant. I know that's.
I was having a great time in the state, and I wanted to continue there. I came here because a senior officer of mine pushed me into coming here, and good I did, because the perspective that you get in Delhi is totally different from what you get in the state. The canvas is totally different. Of course, the normal comforts are much lesser here than in the state. So you gain some, you lose some. Professionally, you grow, but personally, there are problems here. But so be it. So my advice to all civil servants in the state is, you must have a stint in Delhi.
Right.
It's a must. The reason is very simple. Your perspective changes, your outlook changes, and then probably when you go back to the state, you'll be able to contribute much more. So it's, I think, imperative for every civil servant at an appropriate time to have a stint in Delhi.
Right. So we'll see all of them soon at the center. We're almost coming to the end. Just one last comment for Sunil. Praise for you from Vijayam Karta, who says that he remembers when you were posted in Jamshedpur and how accessible you were. So good for you, Sunil. Just a last question to all of you. There's a comment also from Rajiv Gupta, who wonders why all of you have grown your beards. So he's asking whether it's the corona effect.
I think
for me, I mean, I keep jokingly telling everyone that I'm very busy, so I don't find time to shave my beard. But
Yeah.
that apart, I think it's
Yeah.
for a change,
Yeah.
one could do it.
Just a last question to all of you. If there was one policy change that you would like to see in this country, policy change, what would it be? Mr. Swaroop, you first.
The policy change for me is appropriate human resource management, a human resource management policy, because ultimately they determine and they do things on the ground. So human resource management is the key, that policy.
Right. Sunil?
I think I will not mention any particular policy change. What I want is the focus of policy need to change. Instead of small narratives where the government gets stuck, that who benefits, who doesn't benefit and all. Let us be focused more on an overall national and the state development, which is guided more by the economy of the state or the country, the prosperity which people get over long run period, the infrastructure which builds. So let us be clear that what should be our priority in the policies. And that should be very clear, instead of making few benefits to the select group of people, or in general saying that all people below poverty line getting these kinds of benefits. Rather, let us focus on how to enable them raise their income level and their livelihood. So
Right.
that should be my...
Right. Aditya, you're the youngest, so what change would you like to see?
I think he's got logged out, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just...
So I think there's a message for Mr. Swaroop as well. Manisha Mukherjee, she feels honored to have listened to you, sir. And your words evoke a deluge of inspiration to walk the promenade of nation building. So very wise words here. Thank you so much, all of you. It was such a pleasure to listen to this, and really leadership lessons for life, not just for the civil services. Thank you very much. Pawan, would you like to say a final vote of thanks?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Guys, what a great way to start your Tuesday morning, I believe. I'm sure each one of us who joined this morning would have got such amazing insights on bureaucracy, bureaucrats, and the way the relationship with the political world works. On behalf of Tiffin Talks, I would like to thank all of the panelists, Mr. Swaroop, Mr. Barnwal, and Mr. Ranjan, who took out time and shared such inspiring anecdotes with our viewers today. I would like to thank our moderator, Kaveri Bamza, as well, for hosting such a seamless session. Guys, the video feed of this session will be uploaded on our YouTube channel by tomorrow morning. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and help us spread these amazing stories to a larger populace. I think all of us in this country deserve to be, not just entertained, but also be enlightened by what we saw today. Till we meet next.
Be part of the nexus of good. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Till we meet next is goodbye. Thank you. Bye. Cheers.
Thank you.